Hi there. In an earlier video, I received a comment at the end, sort of referring to me as just another talking head. Well, I guess that's true. The thing is that when you look at YouTube videos, you find right now that photography videos seem to fall into maybe several different categories, but two in particular that catch my eye. Number one is the gear review. The gear review, gear rant, whatever you want to call it. If somebody has a video that directly relates to photography gear, they are likely to get more views. I've noticed that even among my videos, a video that relates to the photography gear will get more views and usually get them more quickly. Videos that deal with technique, with composition, generally they sort of linger there. Over time they will be noticed, but not to the extent that a gear related video is. So we have the gear video, we have the technique video, we have the videos that, I guess the best way to put it is debunk things. The videos that show you that this is how things really work, so don't believe what you saw before. So getting back to me and my talking head status, let's face it, I am not going to quote you a bunch of statistics that I've read online about a camera that I have never seen and never used. I mean, I could do a review of some old camera like this one right here because I actually own one and I've actually used it. This is an old Fuji S2Pro. It was given to me by a friend of mine who used to use it in a business that took they took school pictures. So this camera has probably a couple of 100,000 actuations on it. Right now there is a fine line near the top of each image where there's some damage to the sensor. So it's not a camera that I'm using to any great extent. But if you know anything about these cameras, you know that back in the day they were quite popular with portrait photographers and wedding photographers because they were reasonably fast and they were extremely good for skin tones. So this was something that they liked. Also, although it's a 6 megapixel sensor, it's one of those special Super CCD sensors. Fuji has always been messing around with sensors. Nowadays, of course, you have the X-Trans sensor, which is uses a different pattern from the standard bare matrix. This camera used specialized pixels that were basically in a diagonal pattern rather than the normal layout. That's why they have a little symbol over here that looks like a little stop sign, because they're talking about the fact that the actual shape of the pixels on the grid was somewhat different. The result is that this was a 6 megapixel camera that could interpolate fairly accurately a 12 megapixel file size. Notice I said file size. In terms of actual image resolution, though, it did come out to be probably somewhere around the equivalent to a good 8 megapixel camera. So you got a little bit of a boost by using that particular feature. The body was basically, I think it comes from the Nikon F70 film camera, but it's the same basic body that Nikon used in the D100. However, the back looks nothing like a Nikon D100 because Fuji took care of all the electronics. And of course, the most bizarre feature of this particular camera is that here we have lithium batteries. The lithium batteries were what powered the original film camera. They still had to be used because basically the front of this and the top is the film camera. The back is a digital device designed by Fuji, which of course also requires its power source, 4 AA's. So you actually have a camera that has two different battery systems at the same time. Okay? And in terms of battery life, let's just say that it was not terribly impressive. The other unusual thing about this old camera is that it used two kinds of cards. You could use compact flash, and of course back in this day you did not have high capacity compact flash. You did have the CF2 cards, which were actually little hard drives. This is just a regular 512 CF card. It also had this, smart media. And if you know anything about smart media, you know that it wasn't actually very smart, and it's extremely thin. More like the technology you see nowadays in bank cards and credit cards. You know, the little chip on the front. Well, this owes it owes more to this than it does to most modern cards. So that went into a slot, and I could switch between the two manually. Anyhow, I can talk about this camera. And that little mini information session, because it wasn't a review, makes sense because this is something I have worked with. This is something that I have owned now for quite some time. And as a result, I can speak about it and do my talking head, as somebody put it, because this is an item that I am intimately familiar with. It is not something that I just read about on the internet. It is not something that I got from a manufacturer to test, because being, as I am, a very small YouTube channel, I don't get manufacturers offering me products to test. And I don't have the budget to be able to go out and buy these items, test them, and then sell them again, as some do. And those that do that, they typically either have a very good system for selling used products, or they don't mind taking a hit every time they do that. And of course, if they're making money off their channel, maybe it balances out in the long run. But from what I understand, unless you are doing exceptionally well, you don't really make much money as a YouTuber. Meanwhile, I could then branch off to my Pentax collection, which I've already done. So you've seen these. You've seen my Pentax Asterisk D, or Starist D, or as I just call it, the DS. Here it is with an old FA film lens. This would have been the kit lens, a 28 to 80, 3.5 to 5.6 that would have come on the last series of Pentax film cameras. So it's an FA series lens. This runs on AA batteries, uses an SD card, and unlike Nikon, Pentax did give a software update for this. There is a firmware update, so it can actually use high-capacity cards. If you have something like a Nikon D50, you're probably stuck with the oldest SD cards that only go up to 2 gigabytes. This one can easily run on a 16 gigabyte card. Of course, this is the camera I've been talking about a lot lately. This is my K10D. Again, we are talking about SD cards, but now instead of AA batteries, we do have a lithium-ion battery pack and weather sealing. So this is a far more rugged and much heavier and larger camera, as you saw in a previous video. My most recent Pentax is still not a recent camera. It's the original K3. Not the K3 Mark II, but the original K3. It is a very nice camera. I really like the features. There's a lot to like about this camera. In terms of where it fits, I guess it's probably similar to a Nikon D7200 in performance, in image quality, and in general construction. Although, from what I understand, the Pentax might be a tiny bit more rugged. Nikon and Canon tend to keep their most rugged camera designs for the next step up from this. So this doesn't compete with a D500 or a D300 for that matter in terms of ruggedness, but it does probably surpass the D7200 and others in that range. And of course, if I'm going to talk about Pentax, this is the type of film camera that FA lens was designed for. This right here is a Pentax MZ30, a cheaper model. I also have an MZ6, which was, sorry, an MZ7, which was a better model than this. This actually has a plastic lens mount. Not exactly awe-inspiring, especially if you are going to be using larger lenses. But it has that satisfying sound of a motorized film camera. Very nice camera. I have not been shooting film much in the last couple of years, mainly because of the expense. So there you have it, folks. There you've just seen me do my little miniature version of what might have been a review of an old Fujifilm camera and just showing off my collection of Pentax bodies. Those are the things that I actually own. As I said, you can't expect more than that. Now, there will be lots of rants. Because, for one thing, one rant I have right away is that right now the fascination with drone photography has meant that every video that I look at is filled with B-roll from a drone. And I like it. I really do. And I can understand why it is so popular. But it kind of fits in the same category as the extremely thin depth of field and the bokeh shots. It's a little overused. It's kind of to me, it's kind of the modern version of where HDR was a few years ago. Remember all those awful HDRs that people like to show off? And you looked at them and scratched your head and said, reality never looked like that. Nowadays, when people shoot HDR, they do it to make things look the way their eye sees them, to fill in that dynamic range that the camera in one single exposure can't usually get. So we use HDR now to expand that to be closer to human vision, not to warp things to where it's a bizarre artistic interpretation. And, to be fair, if you do it as an artistic interpretation, then more power to you. I'm glad to see that you have found a purpose for that. Well, anyhow, folks, this has been nothing but a very long rant, and it has been too long. So I am now going to say goodbye. If you like this video, as highly unlikely as that is, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I don't blame you. If you want to see more of my videos, by all means subscribe to my channel. And of course, in the extremely unlikely event that you might think that this video might be of some use to anybody, go ahead and share it. Well, hopefully you'll be back again. Bye for now.